Welcome to IndyCar World. I'm Paul Page. Championship auto racing teams, CART, came into being as a concept in 1979. Since that time, it has changed the way that IndyCar racing has been presented and made it one of the most popular forms of motorsports worldwide. Today, we'll take a look at the formative years of CART. Now, at the end of the program, we'll also be giving you an address so you can write us here at IndyCar World. Tell us what it is that you would like to see about the inside of IndyCar racing. In 1979, there was widespread discontent in the world of IndyCar racing, then controlled, sanctioned, and administered by the United States Auto Club. Sponsorships were becoming increasingly difficult to find, while at the same time the cost of new technology was going up and up and up. Well, the day of the sportsman owners was pretty much over, replaced by the new world of sports marketing. Now, the argument may never end as to whether or not good was done when big corporate dollars hit the IndyCar world in the mid-60s, but it was a solid reality. Former race driver, now owner, Dan Gurney, was very thoughtful on the subject of IndyCar racing and how it could be improved. He created a white paper to try to express not only his views, but the views of many of the car owners and many of the team members. That white paper suggested that the owners were not showing good business responsibility. Dan also pointed out a key fact. The cost of racing was not going down, not ever. He knew that a competitive arena drives the cost up. There would always be a group of hard chargers and always a group of less competitive that were on their way for the most part up, still learning the lessons of the sport. He suggested forming championship auto racing teams as an owners group, but it soon became evident that CART racing would have to conduct the races. They split with the United States Auto Club. USAC had conducted IndyCar races since the AAA left in the mid-50s.
The championship auto racing had moved into the major leagues because that's the kind of controversy every team sport went through in the 70s. And May 79 to me was auto racing's version of that controversy.
But Dan Gurney and the rest believed in CART.
Indianapolis car racing has a tremendous potential. And we at CART, we want to see it reach that potential.
Going this way was progress. That would be better ultimately for racing. It would bring our degree of racing into the 20th century.
In order to move into the 20th century, it was obvious that CART would have to conduct its own races. Many team owners met at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Motel in December of 1978. They met with officials of the Sports Car Club of America and formed championship auto racing teams, CART.
The car owners decided that the number of dollars which are going to be invested in 1979, that in the past we've had someone else running our business, and at this time we're going to run our own.
We will slow the cars down. We will attempt to make the sport more interesting for the participant, the spectator.
The decision to create CART as a sanctioning and promoting body would cause a split within the IndyCar ranks. The teams were forced to make decisions, and conversation and controversy went on and on throughout the winter. Most of the teams, though, decided to join the new CART organization. Team owner Pat Patrick continued as the president of CART. CART conducted its first race in the spring of 1979 at Phoenix, Arizona. Al Unser in car number 2 battled with Gordon Johncock in car 20 throughout the long afternoon. Finally, Johncock was able to push to the front and pick up the checkered flag, and with it, CART's first win. That win was worth less than $10,000 to Johncock and Patrick Racing, but still it was a start, and Johncock went into the record books. In April, CART tried a new format at Atlanta International Raceway with twin 125-mile races. Don Garner was CART's new chief steward as they began to organize the official corps. Billy Gamphausen still works in CART today, was a technical inspector. Rick Mears had yet to score an Indy win. Al Unser was sporting sideburns, and Chinaman Teddy Yip was part of the CART series. But bad news arrived in Atlanta. 9 kart teams were rejected from the Indianapolis 500. Pat Patrick responded with anger.
Our reaction was we're very disappointed to think that the United States Auto Club would take this particular action in what appears to be a somewhat of a get-even attitude.
Welcome back to IndyCar World. The split between CART and USAC put many drivers right in the middle.
Yeah, I'd say I'm probably in the middle as much as anybody. Myself and Joe Saldana and Pancho Carter, we run both USAC and CART. We run the sprint cars and midgets with USAC, so we don't know what to do. We want to run and do the best we can, and my sponsor, Bryant Heating and Cooling, they're depending on us to be at the Speedway. My car owner is undecided whether he should support the people who've been denied admission to the racetrack or go ahead and run. So it really puts us in a tough spot.
And I don't really see the justification for it. We entered, and when we entered the race, that means that we agree to the rules that they have set up for the race. So we agreed to run their rules, and then they come back and restrict just some of our group from participating, and I don't understand the reasoning and can't see the justification.
Well, Paul, I was shocked, and yet at the same time there was a certain relief. I think that now it's open warfare. Maybe now we can get down to the real issues.
Well, I think, Paul, I was really surprised because less than 48 hours before that I was in a meeting for 6 hours with Mr. Dick King and Mr. Tom Binford in Detroit, where we were discussing the possibilities of getting the two organizations together. And it was a meeting that was requested by USAC, and Pat Patrick called me and said that both Dick and Tom wanted me to be in the meeting, and we were very serious about many of the things that were discussed. And I was certainly shocked when 2 days later we received a wire.
Attention for the moment, though, was diverted away from the controversy and toward the racing for the twin 125s. Johnny Rutherford, driving for Team McLaren, was able to score a victory in both races. The format was not considered to be popular with the fans, though, and very few fans were actually attracted to Atlanta. After the race, the conversations and controversy continued. Detroit lawyer John Frasco was hired to represent the teams rejected from the Indianapolis 500 in a battle to be held in the hallways and courtrooms of the federal court building in Indianapolis. It was a critically important case for Rick Mears. Finally, the teams were allowed in. The judge ruled against the United States Auto Club and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and said the teams could race. For Rick Mears, Indianapolis 500 victory. We'll be back to look at more of CART's first years right after this message. Welcome back to IndyCar World. I'm Paul Page as we continue our look at the first years of championship auto racing teams, CART, the IndyCars. By the start of 1980, CART and USAC had solved their problems and joined together to become the Championship Racing League, the CRL. Everyone was a skirt watcher, but the skirts were part of the new concept in racing called ground effects. The leader of that technology was the Chaparral team, headed by Jim Hall, with driver Johnny Rutherford. Rick Mears was the Series and the Indy 500 defending champ. Champion last year, since we have seen you at Indianapolis, what has that victory done for you?
Well, it's it's just opened up a lot of doors as far as my career goes. It's really gotten the ball rolling for me and opened up a lot of opportunities and made a lot more demands on my time, but that's the main thing, I guess. I can see that it has had a little less impact this year because of the CART USAC thing and all the debates that we've had on all the different situations. I feel it has taken away quite a bit, yes.
What do you think about that? Is this a better situation now?
Well, I think it will be. I think what happened had to take place in order to get some of the changes made that we did get made today. And I think it's going to take some time to get everything back on its feet again, but I think it's all for the better.
How about that potential damage? Did it do a lot?
Well, I don't know. It's really hard to say. And the year just starting out, we're gonna have to get into the year ways before we can see what happened. But I'm sure it did some damage, but I don't feel it did anything too drastically. I think everything will pull through fine.
Everybody was happy about the new combination, including old-timers like A.J. Watson.
Well, I'm happy they're back together. I'm not real happy with all the situations, like running different booths at different racetracks, but I'm sure glad we're going racing again.
Well, it's going to make it a little easier for me because I run the USAC Sprint, the Champ Dirt division, and some midgets occasionally. So they had a rule in there that as long as I ran kart, I wasn't going to be able to run any of the USAC's other divisions. So it's going to help me out that way, but I'm not sure what effect it's going to have on championship racing yet.
Well, I think we're going to have some rough spots. There's some personality problems that'll eventually crop up, and I don't think it's going to be an easy road, but I think the best part is that, like grown men, everybody's gotten together and said, let's give it a try. Let's try to work this problem out, which has just got to be good for the sport.
Even the grand champion, A.J. Foyt, whose loyalties had rested mostly with USAC, was here and trying to solve all of the many problems between the two organizations. But now the smiles were out because they were ready to go racing. Behind the Datsun pace car, and a smaller crowd than would have been appreciated at Ontario Motor Speedway, Johnny Rutherford led the field down from the pole position, with Bobby Unser the outside of the front row. Rutherford's new ground effect chaparral had incredible downforce. It was rumored that if you could figure out how to get the car on the ceiling, it could run there, stuck to the ceiling. Its ground effects were so strong. When the green flag came out, Johnny Rutherford jumped into the lead in front of the field. This field had an interesting mix of both stock block engines, 4-cylinder Offenhauser engines, and 8-cylinder Cosworth engines. It made for interesting competition. Rutherford led most of the race, chased by Bobby Unser. Then Bobby Unser was able to pull up alongside Rutherford and, using a back marker, move into the lead. But soon the Texas Yellow Chaparral was able to move back toward the front of the field as the race ground on. Rutherford picked up the lead and was unsurpassed after that point, taking the win at Ontario Motor Speedway. It was the start of a season that saw Rutherford go over 2,000 miles without falling out of competition. The truce between the United States Auto Club and the kart continued throughout the year until the Pocono 500, when the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, in the person of John Cooper, announced that he would think about who would sanction the race in the future. The CRL broke up, and kart was now on its own. The split also contributed to the demise of Ontario Motor Speedway, which at the end of the year was closed and sold to local California developers. The grandstands and straightaway were raised. We'll be back with more right after this. IndyCar World continues now as we continue our look at the first years of kart championship auto racing teams. Rick Mears became kart's first champion at the close of 1979. Pat Patrick continued as president, and Wally Dallenbach became the director of competition. 1980 was fully kart sanctioned. In the closing race of the season, Johnny Rutherford was leading the points fight at Phoenix. Midway in the race, he tangled with the Rookie of the Year, Dennis Firestone, and his own wheel flipped the car over. The crowd was silent. Then there was movement, and JR was okay. The awards banquet was held at the Point in Phoenix that night without Johnny Rutherford. It was then that PPG Industries announced a $1 million points fund to the kart drivers, and PPG has been the series sponsor ever since. Kart is proud of the PPG IndyCar World Series. By 1981, Don Garner had retired and Wally Dallenbach took over as the chief steward. Johnny Rutherford made his comeback from the fall crash by winning the Phoenix opener. A new point system was now offered with additional points for the pole and for leading the most laps. In June, Mike Mosley scored his first kart win in a Dan Gurney Eagle with a Chevrolet production-based engine. It was the last time that a stock block won an IndyCar race. July of 1981 saw Michigan International Speedway promote the first ever Michigan 500. It rained the entire first weekend, washing out the race. But then, when the skies cleared, the next weekend it was worth the wait, as the Indy cars battled for the first time for 500 miles on a high-bank speedway.
The starter gives the green flag, and the first Michigan 500 for Indy cars is underway.
During a fuel stop, Herm Johnson's pit erupted in flames that spread quickly to adjacent fuel tanks. Bravery was commonplace as kart safety teams fought the fire. Finally, the blaze was extinguished. When the race resumed, A.J. Foyt slammed the barrier, badly injuring his right arm. Those that didn't know said Supertex was through. Rookies Jose Legarza and Scott Brayton joined the series. Pancho Carter scored his first and only IndyCar win. Tony Bentonhausen was second. 1982 was an 11-race year. Domino's and Provimi joined the sponsor ranks. It was the first time for a temporary circuit as Cleveland debuted. Rookie of the Year Bobby Rahal won his first IndyCar race on the Burke Lakefront Airport in his fourth IndyCar start. From the sidelines, Jim Truman watched with pleasure at his first IndyCar win as an owner. It was also the first time for kart at Elkhart Lake. Hector Rabake won that event. Bobby Unser had now retired, but stayed in racing as the team manager for Jose Legarza. Rick Mears scored his third kart championship for Roger Penske. With the addition of a new race at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas, the kart season in 1983 went to 12 events. Sponsors were now attracted by the massive national exposure kart was getting, having national television coverage of every race. 83 saw 8 different winners. And rookies Teo Fabi, John Paul Jr., Michael Andretti, Randy Lewis, Derek Daly, and Al Unser Jr. Desiree Wilson became the first and only woman to compete in a kart race. At Michigan International, Rick Mears ran the fastest IndyCar race recorded to that time. Rookies scored the 500 wins. Teo Fabi at Pocono and John Paul Jr. at Michigan in a daring last-lap battle with Mears. On the white flag lap, but right behind him, John Paul Jr. was in second place. Mears had only to pass Chris Neifel, but John Paul Jr. was able to get down on the inside. Rick lifted for the flick of an eye, and John Paul charged past. And then Rick Mears lost control as his aerodynamics went away. Chris Neifel slammed into the back of Fabi was the Rookie of the Year, and in his quiet, steady way, Al Unser scored the championship over Fabi in the final race of the year at Phoenix. It's race day in Southern California. The 1984 season dawned with kart racing in the streets of Long Beach, California. Emerson Fittipaldi came out of retirement for some fun in the IndyCars. The circuit was growing with new races at Portland, San Air Canada, and the Meadowlands. Al Unser Jr. scored his first win at Portland. Roberto Guerrero, Al Holbert, and Ed Tim were in the rookie crop. Danny Sullivan scored his first IndyCar win driving for Doug Shearson at Cleveland. Rick Mears was badly injured in this practice accident at San Air. With the support of Darrell Safi and the crew, Mario Andretti was the kart PPG IndyCar World Series champion. Its expansion has been absolutely remarkable. We've seen races in new major markets, Portland, the Meadowlands, Miami, and we have also seen the purses climb and climb and climb, with now over $20 million being offered during the entire series. And the future, well, who knows what it holds. Races scheduled now in Australia for the spring of 1991, the possibility of racing very soon, if not the spring of '91 in Japan, and continuing new venue development. Now, the real key is that kart racing, IndyCar racing, has become incredibly competitive. And the kart driver himself is one of the most versatile drivers in the world, being competent on short ovals, super speedways, temporary circuits, and long road courses. Now, we mentioned that we would be giving you an address so that you can write us here at IndyCar World and tell us what insides you would like to know about. Write to me, Paul Page, at 9292 North Meridian, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46260. That's me, Paul Page, care of IndyCar World, 9292 North Meridian, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46260. That's it for this edition of IndyCar World. We'll see you next time.